Hello and welcome to Energizing Habits, simple strategies for a sustainable, healthy lifestyle. I'm your host, Vicki Cleary, and I guide ambitious women just like you to find more focus, more energy, and more productivity so they can thrive, whether it's in business or in life, all by tapping into sustainable habit change around nutrition, movement, sleep, and stress management. Are you ready? Here we go. Hello and welcome back, my ambitious friends. What is going on? Well, for me, if you've been following on any of the socials or in my email, you know that it has been a stressful couple of months. Of course, last time on the last episode, I was telling you about my vitamin D deficiency, and I've been working through that. I haven't gotten retested yet, but that's coming. But I've been working through with some sunshine. Thank goodness it's more summertime now. And supplements, but also those dark leafy greens and just some wholesome vegetables. But again, it has been a challenge just because of all the different stressors we've had going on. And what has that been? Well, I mean, we've just had a whirlwind semester for my daughter with lots going on between schoolwork and track. And so there's just, so many things happening there. And then I've also had this massive work project that includes so many different people, so many different touch points, right? There are daily meetings, there's all kinds of conversations happening. And while it's amazing to see the team come together to, get towards a completion point, it can still be draining, still stressful, right? So all that to say, I finally got to a point where I feel like I need a reset. So I've actually decided that I'm going to take myself through my 16-week Energy to Thrive project program, which is 16 weeks of going through all the different habits, right? You know the drill. We got the mindset, the sleep and stress management, nutrition, movement, productivity, the whole thing. Just, not just to refocus on my healthy habits. That is a very big part of it, though. But also taking the opportunity as I'm going through and taking a look at each of these habits each week, where can I up level from there, right? If a habit has been working, can I take it up a notch? Or if a habit hasn't been working so much, how can I tweak it or adjust it? Or maybe we need to swap out for a different habit that would serve kind of the same thing. So 16 weeks, I'm working through, already through the first week. And, I'm going to give you some updates as we go along, not weekly, but maybe monthly, right? Minimum at monthly, just so you can know, like, what are the habits I've been working on? What's the effect that it's been having on me? And, that kind of gives you an idea of what to expect for you when you start going on your own journey to reset your habits. Or even if you choose to go on the journey with me through the Energy to Thrive project, or even if it's just coaching one-on-one to understand like where you're at and how do you move forward from where you are towards your goals. But all that to say, working through the first habit, and that has been mindset. And I really like when I'm starting something new, I really like to just start with a mindset leveling. And that is to just understand my why. Why am I going through this change? Why do I want to be, the person who does X, Y, and Z? Do I want to be the person who does X, Y, and Z? And what does that look like? And it really just helps to set that, it casts a vision, right? What do I want to be in the future? And that then helps me to set the goal of what that is, what that starts to look like. It starts to tell my brain that it's possible. It can look like this, which is so imperative because you know how your brain just wants to naturally say, no, we're not going to do this today. We want to stay exactly where we are, no change. But when you've cast the vision for yourself and your brain starts to see that it's possible, it makes it a little easier as you go through these changes so that you can continue the work. So that's what I'll be working on over the next 16 weeks, 15 now. I've already done actually through week 1, but I'm going to save the update for a little bit later. But I did want you to know that that is what I'm working on, because when one has gone through the stressors of life, right, there are times we feel more resilient, but at the same time, or not at the same time, but at other times, we don't feel as resilient. And it's okay to recognize that and take steps to address it, right? Before we spiral into some kind of burnout, before we go down a path that starts to take those negative effects on our actual health and well-being. So that's why I'm doing this, right? Because it shows you, hey, we can take a pause point. We can start to reflect and reset on ourselves. It's just good all around. But all right. So again, that's going to be my next 16 weeks. And also, this leads into the topic for today. There's a car driving by and distracted me. It gets into the topic for today, which is about stress and understanding how that stress can affect you, but not just you, your team, right? Because most of us, well, many of us, I guess, may or may not be most, many of us aren't just working with ourselves, right? We work with other people, we work with a team. And when one person starts to feel kind of crappy or starts to get, like they're really stressed out, starting to go through burnout, that's when it's easy for the other teammates to then start to pick up on it. They may not fully understand what's going on, but they can sense these changes. And then they may even start to absorb, right? And start to feel that stress themselves and start to pick up on the different changes that you go through, right? The mindset, the attitude, and the whole thing, which we're going to talk about. But so stress and teams, specifically stress for high-performing teams, but honestly, stress affects all teams, regardless of where you are. So we're going to talk about the different stages of a team. We're going to talk about how stress can affect them, what stress looks like. Of course, we dove into stress and burnout last episode. So if you want more information on what stress looks like, what the red flags are, go back and listen to that one. But how stress affects the team, and then how can we implement some strategies to ensure that our teams thrive, right? So that we can be productive, so we can have a happy and healthy team environment. So again, we're going to start with the different stages of a team. So you don't just pull a team together, great, go start doing work together. There's actually different stages that a team goes through as they are coming together to work. So that's the stages of team development. And the first stage is forming. And when you're forming, you've literally been smashed together as a team. You might start to get to know each other's names. You start to know where everybody sits, right? What's your phone number? You're really just starting to get to know each other. And you might be starting to do some work. And it might be a little awkward, at times, just because like you don't know how a certain person's going to react to a certain thing. So you might be careful about what you say, or you might be extra gracious for somebody just because, it's like, you don't know this person, we don't know what's going to happen, whatever. So there's a little bit of trepidation there as the team is starting to come together. Then as they start getting a little more comfortable, an interesting thing happens. It's kind of like when you get comfortable at home, you have a different bit of an attitude when you're at home than when you're at work or when you're out in public, right? So when you're out in public, you might be like on your best behavior most times. And you're super polite to people. Well, most people, right? You're super polite and saying thank you, whatever. If there's some kind of a conflict with somebody in line or something, a lot of people don't tend to make a beef of it. Now, some people do. We're not talking about those people, um, but when you come home, if somebody like doesn't close the cupboard and we, like make a big thing of it, that's a totally different way of behaving, but it's because where we're comfortable. And when we're comfortable, we can let our guard down. We can let a few more things loose. And as the team comes together, you get into that storming phase where you are starting to understand a little bit about each other, you're getting a little more comfortable, but at the same time, these frictions are starting to occur. And that's where you might be a little less guarded in what you say, but also some people aren't quite ready for what you might have to say. And so it can create some conflict. We might be trying to do, we're all moving towards the same deliverable on the same path, but might be going about it in different ways. And again, it just starts to create some conflict. So whereas forming might feel a little awkward, storming is going to be a little bit more painful. Painful is a good word. Just because of all those different conflicts that come up, all those different conversations that might feel a little weird just because you're not used to having an argument with somebody at work, for instance. And then you have norming. Norming is the third stage. And this is where, okay, now you're really starting to understand how each other work, probably developing a little bit of respect for each other. But because you're starting to understand how people work, you're understanding how to work with them, right? So that you can work together and not against each other. And so norming is where things just start to again feel normal. But that just means that you are creating cohesion, right? You understand you're working towards the common goal, but maybe now you've started to lay out, okay, well, if Joe's going to do this, then Bobby's going to do this, and Susie's going to do this over here. Whereas before, you might have all been scrambling to try and do all the same thing because it just wasn't clear or hadn't been addressed. Or maybe they had all done those things before and they weren't sure that now you only have to do this one part of it, right? Once you get through norming, now you become a performing team. And when you're performing, now you're actually starting to reach peak productivity. You're starting to become quite effective as a team, right? It's almost like clockwork. You all really understand how each other are working. You know who is doing what. You know who to call if you need help. And again, you're performing. Now from here, I like to add in another layer, and that is the high performing team. And the high performing team looks, a lot like the performing team, but we're just doing it at a more consistent basis, right? It's not that hey, we hit our peak productivity and then we come back down for a bit or we disband or anything. No, now on a regular basis, we are continually performing at that peak level. You're achieving those goals very consistently. You start to trust each other way more. You communicate more openly. You understand the communication styles a bit more. And you're also more committed to each other's success, right? As opposed to like just the project success. You really are becoming a team unit and working with each other and for each other. So now those are the different stages of a team. Regardless of what stage a team is in, there are always going to be stressors. Now, you're going to have a lot of stressors when you're storming because it just is naturally a more stressful time when you're bumping up against each other. But even as you're performing and high performing, there are stressors. But also, you have to take into account the team is comprised of individuals, and those individuals go through stress at home, on the road, in different places. And that stress can take its toll and they can bring it back to the team and just start to wear down on an individual. And then that individual stress can start to actually take effect on the team. And so that's why it's such an important topic for me as a project manager, because understanding how an individual stress actually affects the team and how can we mitigate it? How can we make the team, well, not make the team as if we're forcing, but how can we get the team to go through some different practices and some different strategies so that we can mitigate that a bit, or so we can understand what another team member is going through. We're not just there for, let's get the work done. So all the different stages have stress. A lot of the individuals bring stress into the team. What does it look like? So again, you can go back to the previous episode number 27, to hear more about stress and burnout, and especially for the individual. A lot of the things I'll talk about today are also about the individual, but you might start to see how it trickles through to the team. So things like tight deadlines, high expectations, especially, when you are that high performing team, you might still have some conflicts, or they could be external conflicts. They may not be within the team. Maybe some uncertainty created in different places. And these can all cause stressors along with the individual stress that a person goes through. All affects team dynamics, all affects individual well-being. So when it comes to individuals, you'll start to see some physical exhaustion, right? Just the act of going through or dealing with stress can make one exhausted. There can also be some emotional drain and overwhelm, maybe some increased irritability, right? So like when you're kind of stressed, going through a lot or whatever, you can be short with people sometimes because, well, you may not have the energy to deal with, whatever else is going on. You might have decreased motivation, may create some decrease in productivity. You may feel less engaged. There is cognitive strain, right? Which means you have difficulty concentrating, making decisions, staying focused, right? So it's hard to get work done when you can't stay focused on the thing, or you can't stay connected to a conversation, or you forget things, right? Where did I put the sticky note that has this information, whatever it is? You might also see sleep disturbances. So the individuals, they might talk about, gosh, I didn't get a good night of sleep last night, or, having trouble falling asleep because I'm worried about X, Y, and Z. You might also see some social withdrawal. Maybe they're withdrawing from the team, or maybe they're not wanting to go out. Everyone's talking about, what did you do this weekend? And oh, they just stayed at home, kind of chilled out a little bit, which is okay, right? From time to time, that's how people manage their energy and stuff. But if you notice it becomes a thing, or they don't even really want to talk about it, then you're starting to see the social withdrawal. So that again is the individual signs. But what happens when stress starts to affect the team? So stress can manifest in various ways within the team, and recognizing it, of course, is crucial as a manager, as a leader of a team, but also as a team member, right? It's not just leaders and managers who can recognize the signs. Team members can recognize it in each other too. So some things within a team. So if you're looking down at the team from a higher level, or if you're a team member and you're kind of seeing things from that step back point of view, you might see a decrease in productivity from the team. There's a decline in their productivity, maybe even their quality of work, and that could be one sign that stress is starting to affect. There's other things that can affect productivity. So with all these different signs, it's good to just like get inquisitive, like what is happening within the team that is causing, in this case, decreased productivity. But what about increased conflict, right? You're starting to see more tension between the team, maybe some more arguments, or maybe there's not any talking, and it could be because of some underlying, issue. But it could also be because somebody is pissed off from something that happened in the parking lot or at home, and they're just bringing, that attitude into the team, and then they're not managing it well because, they're stressed out already. But again, there could be disagreements, arguments, a lack of cooperation. And so now if a team has already been through the storming phase, this would be for sure a red flag, because in the storming phase, some of that's going to be normal. And so you kind of want to let it flow through. But if you're seeing that happen after storming, maybe they've already normed, you've gotten to performing, maybe you've even gotten to high performing, and now you see that these conflicts are arising. That's a good indicator that some stress is starting to take effect on the team. Low morale. So not just one person, but it's like, what an attitude. Gratitude for an attitude is, what's the word I'm looking for? I just had it. Oh my God, I'm completely drawing a blank on the word. Infectious. It spreads. When somebody has a good attitude, the rest of the people tend to pick up on that good attitude. The same happens with a bad attitude, right? And when that bad attitude ripples through the team, you start to notice low morale overall. And that could also come with disengagement, apathy, right? We don't care what's going on. We don't care what's happening. We don't care if we hit the deadline, or there's just some general negativity. With all of this, you might even start to see some high turnover rates. So again, if you're looking at this team as a whole and you're seeing, gosh, we've lost a few, some people are leaving. Like, what's going on with, it's, people leave, people find better opportunities. But depending on the size of your team, if you start noticing more and more people leaving, that's an interesting sign. Hey, we might have some issues going on here that aren't those individuals making a different choice, right? Could be that stress is starting to affect their feeling on the job, and that they are choosing then to want to go someplace else. Physical symptoms. So in a individual, so this goes back to the individuals once again, but you start to see that fatigue, the headaches, muscle tension, digestive issues. So the individual might start talking about these things, but as the stress ripples through the team, you might see more people starting to have these different physical issues. And those can actually lead to absenteeism, which is the next sign. And so when people are starting to, maybe they're not leaving the job completely, but maybe they're taking more days off. They're calling in sick more, right? Now, being calling in sick can be a way to deal with the stress. Maybe they just literally need some time to decompress, but also they could be having this manifestation of the physical symptoms that really is making them feel ill. The stress is making them feel ill. And so then they have to take the time off. The absenteeism causes an effect on the team, right? Because somebody has to get the work done. So who's picking up the slack? Who's having to do the thing? And then that causes stress on that person or those multiple people. So you can start to see how that can ripple through. Lack of communication. So not just from an individual, but within the team. So again, you've already gone through your norming and now you're performing. And now all of a sudden we have a hard time communicating with each other. So the stress can actually inhibit effective communication. You've got misunderstandings, there's miscommunication, maybe somebody heard the wrong thing, remember somebody said the wrong thing, and the collaboration just isn't happening either, right? And why is this? Well, the interesting thing here is that the stress, going back to the individual, the stress actually gets in it out your it turns the the stress turns your hypothalamus into like this very active communicator to tell your body, hey, we need to draw some blood flow away from, some energy and blood flow away from your prefrontal cortex where your decisions are made, where your communication happens. We're going to pull that away from the front of the brain because we've got to give it to our extremities. We've got to give it to our legs, to our heart, because we've got to prepare for fight or flight, right? There is no, what I call the saber-toothed tiger. We're not facing that, but the stress is causing that response in our body. We're having that sympathetic response. And that is, again, drawing the blood, drawing the energy away from the prefrontal cortex, which is where that decision-making and communication happens. It's where when you can just take a minute, just pause a minute and just think about something, that's what's happening there, but not when you're super stressed. And that's where you start to see the breakdown in the team when multiple people are going through something like that. You might also see an increase in micromanagement. Now, this could be from the managers because they're seeing that maybe productivity, they're worried about productivity, about meeting productivity, let's say. But you might also see it from different team members, depending on their role, but also depending on their personality type. Certain personalities will take on a more micromanagement style because they want the rest of the team to be able to perform. And that could be a lot of checking in on other people. It could be, you know what, you can't do it the way it needs to be done, so I'll do it. There's lots of different ways that micromanagement starts to happen, but when you start to see more of it and the team isn't just in their normal flow, their performing flow, that is an indicator that stress is starting to take effect. And then, of course, I mentioned the behavioral, right? The attitude, the bad and the good attitude that are infectious, right? So behavioral changes, noticing behavior in individuals, those demeanors among your team members, irritability, mood swing, withdrawal, excessive perfectionism, all can start to not only affect the individual, but then start to actually cause a ripple effect through the team. So I think it's important to note here, once again, that while these signals start, you might start to see these signs in the individual, they're going to create a ripple effect within the team. And then the team is going to start to suffer. The performance is going to start to suffer. And they may come back to, feel like they're in the storming stage again. And then they might have to work through their stress to build up to norming and performing again. Now, as a leader and as a team member, we have got to be vigilant and we have got to be proactive in identifying these signs, because when that one person starts to spiral and it starts to ripple through the team, it's much harder, it's much more challenging to rein it in than with just the individual before it takes effect in the team. So if you are checking in with your team members, right, if you're being really connected to them, Not just as your leader, but then also the actual team members being connected to each other. So you can start to see these signs and gosh, Sarah just feels a little bit off today, so let's check in with her, right? Have a conversation. Don't be afraid to ask how someone is doing and really ask how someone is doing, right? So now that we understand the different signs of not just the individuals from last episode to this episode, but also how it starts to ripple through the team and things you might start to see. What do we do about it? Not just to help the team get out of it, but also to prevent it, right? Those stress management strategies for teams so that we can prevent some of this from happening and keep those teams at their performing and their peak performing areas. So some different things that you can do kind of in these different categories. So the first category is communication. Now, for me, communication is the most important thing to keep open. It is the core of your team, right? Being able to communicate. And so encouraging open and transparent communication and providing tips, some help for navigating difficult conversations during the stressful situations can help to support your team. But you can also try some fun, interesting ways to help get the team to come together and better connected for communication. So one thing that can be pretty fun is to do an escape room challenge. Working together to solve a puzzle, to get out of the room or or like a murder mystery or something like that, right? Can be fun, and it causes them to think and work together, especially within a time limit, depending on the challenge that you do. It requires that clear communication and collaboration, but it's all in a fun setting, right? You could also try a storytelling circle. This is where, and don't think of like a kumbaya kind of stuff, right? So you can sit around the table if you want, it doesn't matter. But you sit in a circle and one team member starts a story with just a single sentence. And then as you go around, each team member adds onto that story one sentence at a time. So, Sarah might say, the three bears live in a house. And then the next person would say, the three bears live in a house. And then they would stepped out for a picnic. And then the third person adds on a third sentence. And so the story grows and grows and grows. And so, of course, if you're later down the line, it can be more challenging because you have to remember all these different lines. But it's also interesting to see how the story changes because, people forget what maybe that first sentence was specifically. Um, but it can be a fun way, like to see that evolution of the communication in a non-stressful way. But it promotes listening, creativity, and collaboration. The next category of stress management strategies is team building. And so, of course, the fun things above are very much team building activities. But there's also some different ways that you can build the team to help create some trust and strengthen relationships. And one is a marshmallow challenge. So if you've done the marshmallow challenge, you have some different supplies, right? So you have the spaghetti, like the long dry spaghetti, not wet spaghetti, maybe some tape, some string, and a marshmallow. And the task is to build the tallest freestanding structure with your spaghetti, your dried spaghetti, and the different supplies. And those are the only supplies you can use. And so the idea is like, you start stacking spaghetti noodles together, starting to create these different structures. You're taping them together. You might be tying things with the string. And then the marshmallow is somewhere in, right? So there's certain rules about have to use all the different supplies. You can't use any other supplies, but that the team has to see, how they can make this structure stand. And sometimes it's like, well, what's the tallest structure that a team can make? And it's just so fun to see all these different crazy structures that people come up with to fulfill the challenge. And then another one is team building bingo. And so then you've got a bingo card with various team building activities or challenges. One of them could be give team members, give a compliment to a teammate. Or share a fun fact about yourself, right? And so then you're going around, trying to check off your bingo card with different people and having these different conversations. So again, you're getting to know your team members a little bit more. That one is maybe not so much, depending on what you put on the card, it may be not so much about like collaboration, but you certainly are getting to know your team members a lot more. Okay, the next category is time management. Now, time management skills are essential for reducing overwhelm and preventing burnout. So if you can share, I mean, there's a ton of techniques out there, right? If you can share with your team, you know, how to prioritize your tasks, how to set realistic goals, how to manage your deadlines effectively. Um, but you can also do some things to help them understand their time a little bit better. You can ask them to do a time study. And a lot of people tend to freak out about this time study idea because the idea is you're going through your day and you're making a note of how are you spending your time, and you want to account for it, you know, at least in 15-minute increments. Now, if you want to track it more detailed, you certainly can. 15-minute increments is usually um, pretty sufficient. But in 15-minute increments throughout your day to understand where are you spending your time. It's usually quite eye-awakening, right? Because people may be spending a lot of time um, hunting down information, right? I had to go figure out the answer to this problem or something to that effect. Or they're spending a lot of time sending emails, or they're spending a lot of time doing this or that, you know, in the day-to-day, you don't realize it, but in fact is actually happening. So the reason that people tend to freak out is because they think, oh, you're trying to look at my day and figure out how can we squeeze out any last bit of lack of productivity. And if that's the way you're thinking about it, you're of course thinking about it all wrong, because in order to help our teammates be more effective and more productive, we have to give their brains time to decompress throughout the day. So we want to try to find ways to help them work more efficiently. We want to find ways or times that make sense for them to go take a break, right? Could be a go for a walk outside, or you know, take a walk around the building or something to that effect. Because our brains cannot be on the entire 8, 9, 10 hours that we're at the office, right? It's just not practical. We have to take time throughout the day, and the time study can help figure out if you're doing that at all, or maybe, you know, can we add to what you're already doing, or where can we fit it in so that you can do it? All right. And another way that you can help this time management is, you know, getting the mental break, if you will, is to go take a walk, do some breathing exercises, take a few stretches, and, you know, step away from your computer, that kind of thing. Because then when you come back, you're more refreshed, you're more revived, more clear to be able to do those activities that are on your list. Now, this last one actually rolls right into the, so this next category rolls right into the last category, rolls right into the next category, is what I'm trying to say. And that is mindfulness and self-care, right? So when you can introduce mindfulness practices, it can help your team members reduce stress and can increase focus. It can make them more efficient, right? The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes that you spend can actually save them 5, 10, 15 minutes in their day because they could be more efficient. So by encouraging them being your teammates, to do some simple mindfulness exercises, they can be incorporated into the day. Um, again, can make them so much more efficient. And the thing that I like to remind people here is that wellness equals self-care. It's critical, right? If you want to be well, you've got to take care of yourself. And that can look a whole number of different ways, but you know, it's taking those breaks, it's giving yourself the time. And so encouraging your team members to do that. It could be, you know, asking them to nourish their bodies, nourish their minds. You know, don't just go to dog and shake to get nothing, you know, against dog and shake necessarily, but you know, if you're going there on a regular basis and you're not getting nourishing foods like vegetables and that kind of thing, your body is taking on stress. And we want to encourage our team members to be more optimized. Now, you can also make this more fun by having team challenges, team wellness challenges, to encourage not only team building, but then also that support for that individual wellness. You know, a sleep challenge, who's consistently getting 7 or more hours of sleep each night? Who is going for a walk daily, right? And maybe it's a month-long thing, trying to create that habit, so in a year, you've just practiced 12 different habits across. And I mean, just think about the optimization that can happen when you all are improving on that level. All right, now there's one more category, and that is flexibility and adaptability. It is so important to remind and to coach our team members to embrace change and remain flexible in the face of challenges. I mean, there's a lot of people that just get hung up on change, right? So change management is a whole thing because people get hung up on change. But if we can encourage them, again, coach them through it, right? How to approach obstacles with a growth mindset, how to focus on finding creative solutions. And I particularly like to coach on the growth mindset, on flexibility thinking, and on making decisions for your future self, because all three of those can kind of flip that switch in your mind so that you're making these better decisions for yourself, which then ripple through to your team. So the growth mindset is, of course, like continuing to learn, knowing that we aren't static beings. The earth isn't static, right? Things change, people change, individuals change. Flexibility thinking is about the ability to think about things in a new or different way, finding alternative solutions. And, I like to ask, what else is true, right? This is true right now, today, but what else is true? Or what will be true tomorrow? Or if this is true, how can I adjust it? How can I solve for that differently? Brainstorming, just coming up with a bunch of crazy ideas, like as far out in left field as you could possibly think of, starts to press again, starts to develop that flexibility thinking. And then finally, making decisions for your future self. It's it's delayed gratification is what it is, right? It's understanding that you're making a choice today that is going to affect the outcome that you desire, right, in the future. And so that instant gratification, like we're making a decision for the right now. And usually when we are stressed, we're frazzled and we're making a decision, we want to make ourselves feel better right now. And so that's the choice we're going to make. What makes us feel better right now? The bag of chips, or I just want to like zone out at my desk or scroll, doom scroll on Facebook or whatever. Um, but when we can pause and think about the future choice, how it's going to affect us in the future, that delayed gratification practice, which really we got to get into our prefrontal cortex to be able to make that decision. And so a lot of these other things like taking a break and, breathing exercises and the whole thing help set us up to be able to do that. So flexibility mindset is a key factor, but so is creating the environment where the teams have the flexibility. If they need to leave for a kid's function, a school function, or stay home if they're feeling under the weather. If they need to shift their schedule, they need to start a little later. Maybe that means they got to finish a little later. But there's different ways that we can be flexible in the workplace to help an employee, a team member, to be more productive, to be more efficient based on what's going on around them or within their own lives, right? So that's where I like to say, talk to your team, see what they need. The team may not need a 4-day work week, but having some flexibility to adjust times or to change the way that you're doing meetings may certainly be something that they want to talk about. Okay. So I hope you found these stress management strategies helpful as you are striving to build and lead high-performing teams, or maybe you're striving to participate in a high-performing team. But prioritizing your own well-being and supporting each other, this is how we start to create a culture of resilience and success within our teams. Now, of course, because the podcast is called Energizing Habits, we're going to find an energizing habit for you to implement this week. So now where I'm at here in Wichita, Kansas, the weather's going to be very nice. It's going to start getting up towards the summer temperatures, but not so hot yet, especially before lunch, right? I encourage you to make time for a walking break outside, like 10, 15 minutes. You can do that solo, or you can go for the bonus, I like to say, and take a walk with your team. And you can decide, is this a working walking meeting, meaning that you're going to conduct some business while you're walking outside? Or you can keep it casual and just get to know each other, right? And you're just going to go for coffee. You're going to talk about the weather. You're going to talk about what your dog or your kid did, over the weekend or something like that. So there's no wrong answer here, but getting outside, getting some fresh air in the middle of your day will help the team to reset their brains a little bit. And always remember that small habits can lead to big changes over time. You've heard me say you can change your life without overhauling your lifestyle. This is true with your teens as well. So, this is why I coach my clients through the Energy to Thrive project, the coaching membership, but it's also why I'm going through the Energy to Thrive project because I want to make some changes, but I don't feel the need to overhaul everything. I don't need to make these drastic changes because I know I can go one habit at a time and have a profound effect. Now, if you are ready to break out from burnout, or if you want to prepare to prevent it, let me know. I would love to get on the phone with you and talk through what your goals are, learn a little bit more about you, and maybe how some different strategies can help you. So that's what I have for you today, my friends. If you found this episode helpful, I want to hear from you. So do me a favor, like the episode. So whatever platform you're listening on, like the episode and take a screenshot and tag me in your Instagram stories. That way I know that you're seeing the episodes, you're watching or listening to the episodes, and that you're getting benefit from them, right? I would love to hear how this episode or any of the episodes are making an impact for you and your health and wellness journey. Also, stay tuned as I start to share my journey of my own reset through the 16-week program. And we're kind of resetting after my stressful first quarter, if you will. All right. Thanks, my friends. Have an energized day.